They say Wyoming's winter mornings are enough to kill a man twice. First with the cold, then with the silence. I'd learned to greet both, bundled in the same old coat, jaw set against the wind. I was a solitary creature by choice. Didn't expect company, didn't want it. But that morning, trudging past the north fence to check the stock, I saw something that didn't belong. A shape slumped against the post, tangled in rope and frost. My first thought was coyote bait. My second, God help me, was trouble. I moved closer, boots crunching on the frozen grass, shotgun heavy in my grip. When I saw the shape was a girl, maybe 15, cheeks red with cold and eyes so wide they barely blinked, the world spun sideways. Her wrists were raw, rope cuts bright against pale skin. Hair matted to her cheek, she shivered like a colt on its last legs. She flinched hard when I knelt beside her, so I slowed my voice and laid the shotgun in the snow. Name's Samuel Hayes. I ain't gonna hurt you. That only made her shake more. Took me a minute to cut her free, working the knots with numb fingers. The rope fell away and she hugged her knees, making herself small, watching me like I was just another predator. Her lips moved without sound until finally she rasped, "Emma." The name hung in the air, fragile as her. I wrapped my coat around her shoulders and felt her bones through the cloth. She was colder than death, skin marked with bruises, old and new. My hands shook with something that had nothing to do with the cold. The sight of those wounds dragged up memories I'd spent years burying under hard work and whiskey. She barely let me touch her, but I managed to lift her, cradling her as gentle as I could. She tensed up so bad my arms ached, but she didn't. Fight. I carried her through the snow to the house, anger flaring at whoever had left her here like a sack of garbage. I'd never meant to play anyone's savior, never thought myself fit for it. But looking at Emma, I saw every boy and girl I couldn't save, myself included. Inside, the stove threw a little heat and I set her by it, rubbing warmth back into her hands. She watched every move, silent, eyes darting for exits. I fetched water, my voice low, telling her what I was doing. "You're safe now, I promise." My own words tasted strange. Promises in my life had mostly been broken. I couldn't ignore the tremor in my own hands as I cleaned her wounds. Every wince, every twitch of her jaw brought back flashes. Dark. Rooms, locked doors, a belt uncoiling. I pushed them away, focusing on Emma. I found a wool blanket, wrapped her up, and tried to remember how to offer comfort, how not to frighten. She shrank from every gesture. Didn't want to eat, didn't want to speak, only stared at the door like expecting the devil to walk through. Maybe she was right. Part of me wanted to turn her out, keep my quiet life. But looking at her, so small, so hurt, I knew I'd never forgive myself if I did. So I made my choice. I would help her no matter what that cost me. The kettle whistled, but Emma didn't so much as flinch. She sat by the stove, knees to her chest, staring at the wood floor as if counting splinters. Might keep her heart from giving out. I kept my movements careful. Quiet. Poured hot water into a mug, dropped in a sugar cube, set it in front of her without a word. She didn't touch it. I turned to the window, drawn by instinct more than reason, and froze. Dust clouds on the horizon. Too many for a single rider. A chill crawled up my spine that had nothing to do with the cold outside. Men were coming and they weren't neighbors bringing bread. I kept my voice even. "Emma, listen. You see those riders?" She didn't look, but I could tell she heard. Her whole body tensed. "Are they the ones who did this to you?" Her answer was barely a whisper. "My father and his friends. If they find me—" She broke off, mouth trembling, eyes searching the room for some escape I couldn't give her. "They won't get past me," I said, but my heart was pounding hard. I'd lived through enough to know men who rode this early weren't coming for a cup of coffee. I moved to the gun rack, took down my rifle, checked the chamber. My hands moved on their own, muscle memory from another life. Emma's gaze flickered to the door, wild with panic. You don't know them. My father, he owes money to Marcus Devlin. He left me here. He told them they could take me, pay his debts. My throat clenched. I wanted to ask more, but we were out of time. I crouched beside her. You trust me? Her head shook in the tiniest arc, tears welling. No. Good, I said. Trust is earned, but you stay behind me. No, matter what. You hear gunfire, you hide under the bed and don't come out. Not for anyone but me. She nodded. I could see her fighting to hold herself together, every muscle in her face working to stay strong. I stepped outside, rifle in hand, feeling every year of hard living settle into my bones. The wind cut through my coat as I watched the riders draw closer. 3 men, 2 I didn't recognize, the third older, slouched in the saddle, hat pulled low. Emma's father, by the look of him, mean streak in his jaw, hands that looked used to violence. I called back over my shoulder, "Lock the door after me." I heard the bolt slide home. I planted my boots wide in the snow, heart thudding against my ribs, and tried to recall every lesson my own father beat into me about facing trouble head-on. Never show fear, never back down, never let the bastards see you shake. They pulled up short, horses snorting steam. Emma's father spat, wiped his mouth. "That's my daughter you got there, mister. Hand her over and nobody gets hurt." I leveled the rifle. "She's not going anywhere with you." He laughed, short, ugly. "You don't want to cross Marcus Devlin. This ain't your fight." I shook my head, feeling the line draw hard, beneath my boots. "You left her to die. That makes it my fight." For a second, nobody moved. The only sound was the horses pawing the earth, and my breath fogging in the bitter air. I wondered if Emma could hear us from inside, if she was counting the seconds, praying for a miracle. Inside, I knew Emma was crouched in the shadows, clutching the wool blanket, listening to the voice of a man who should have loved her, come, to drag her back to hell. And out here, I was making a choice I couldn't unmake, one that'd echo far past this frozen morning. The standoff dragged time out, made every second feel like a noose tightening. Emma's father slid off his horse, boots hitting the snow with a heavy thud. The 2 men behind him, guns for hire by their look, both of them long-faced and twitchy, fanned out on either side. They wore the blank, hungry stares of men who did violence for coin, not principle. Emma's father sneered, "Marcus Devlin don't like being made a fool. You got 2 choices. Hand her over, or we come in and take her." My grip tightened on the rifle. I'd faced men like this before, ranch bullies, drunks in saloons, even my own kin when whiskey got hold of them. But this was different. I saw Emma's small handprint on my coat sleeve where she'd clung to me, saw the blue-green bruises ghosting her neck. I heard my own mother's voice, years gone, whispering that a man is only as good as the line he won't cross. "You got no." "Right," I called, voice louder than I meant. "Ain't nobody's child a debt to be paid." The taller of the 2 hired men shrugged. "We got our orders. Marcus wants her back, whole if possible. He's owed." That word, owed, sent a bolt of anger straight through me. I stepped forward, squaring my shoulders. "You tell Marcus Devlin that if he wants her, he can come himself." Emma's father spat again. "You think you can protect her against Devlin? He runs this valley. Ranches, law, hell, even the undertaker owes him." He grinned, yellow, teeth bared. "Ain't nobody'll lift a finger for some little whore's bastard." Those words hit Emma harder than a blow. Through the window, I saw her flinch, shoulders hunching up like she'd been struck. Rage spiked inside me. I felt the cold slip away, replaced by the old heat of helplessness and shame, feelings I'd sworn never to taste again. I steadied my aim. "You take one more step, and you'll find out what a desperate man can do." The hired guns hesitated. They knew the look in my eyes, a man with nothing left to lose. Emma's father didn't. He took a swaggering step closer, hand drifting to his belt. I cocked the rifle, the sound cracking across the snow. "We'll be back by sundown," he said finally, voice low. "You got till then to come to your senses. Marcus will want his property returned." He spat at my feet, turned, and mounted up. The three of them rode off, horses kicking up clods of frozen earth, leaving only silence behind. I went back inside, jaw clenched so tight it hurt. Emma was sitting where I'd left her, eyes red but dry, staring at the flames. "They'll kill you," she said, not as a warning but a fact. "Maybe," I replied, dropping my coat on the peg. "But I won't let them take you." She didn't answer. I sat across from her, suddenly aware of just how thin the cabin's walls were, how easily violence could find us here. My hands shook as I poured her another cup of water. I realized I'd thrown away my safety for a girl I'd met only hours ago. And yet, for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. The cabin felt even smaller after the men left, every creak in the timber magnified by tension. I blocked the door with a dresser and set a second rifle within arm's reach. Nerves, raw as barbed wire. I tried to keep busy, feeding the stove, checking the windows, anything to keep my mind from drifting to the inevitable return of Devlin and his men. Emma barely moved, wrapped tight in the blanket, only her eyes visible above the wool. I forced myself to sit. "You hungry?" I asked, though she hadn't touched a thing since I'd brought her in. She shook her head. We sat in silence, the wind scraping the eaves. After a while she spoke, voice so quiet it almost wasn't there. "You want to know why they want me back?" She didn't wait for an answer. "Marcus Devlin is my real father, my mother. She never told anyone, not even me, until she was dying. She begged Thomas, my stepfather, not to tell. But when she died, he started drinking. He hated me for what she'd done, for who I was." Her words came out flat, like reciting a list of injuries too old to bleed. "Thomas started hurting me. Marcus, he just wanted to own me. After Mama died, Thomas tried to use me to settle his gambling. He told Marcus he could have me. But then he got scared. He said Marcus would kill him if he found out what he'd done to me." I felt my hands curl to fists. The anger burned deep, at Marcus, at Thomas, at every coward who'd turned their back on a child in pain, and at myself, for how easily those memories surfaced, how familiar it all felt. I drew in a breath, slow and ragged. "You ain't the only one who's been traded for a debt," I said, surprising even myself. Emma looked at me, eyes widening just a little. I'd never told another soul about my own past. Not the neighbors, not the preacher, not even the bottle. My old man owed money to a mining boss. Sold me off at 10 to haul ore and take his beatings. I ran when I got big enough. Figured the only thing worth trusting was myself. She stared at me, lips trembling. "Did it ever get better?" "Some. Days," I said honestly. "Most days you just get meaner or quieter, but you get to choose which." We sat in the hush, old wounds pulsing in the space between us. For the first time, Emma looked straight at me, not with fear, but with a flicker of understanding. We were both the kind of broken you can't see from the outside. "You could still turn me in," she whispered. I shook my head. "You're not property, and you're not alone. Not anymore. Whatever comes, we face it together." Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. I could see her weighing the words, trying them on like an old coat. I wondered if I had any right to make promises at all, but I meant what I said. Outside, the last light was bleeding out of the sky, sharpening every shadow. I moved to check the window, my reflection caught in the glass. For the first time in years, I didn't look like a man running from his past. I looked like someone ready to fight for something. Dusk spilled across the prairie like blood from a wound. I watched the horizon through narrowed eyes, every muscle strung tight as wire. Emma sat near the stove, her face half hidden in shadow, as if afraid the coming night might find her and drag her back to hell. We both listened for hoofbeats, the minutes stretching, then snapping one by one. When the riders came, there was no mistaking them. 10 at least, dark shapes spilling from the hills, moving with the kind of purpose that meant they weren't here to talk. I counted faces as they rode in, the 2 hired guns, Emma's father Thomas, and at their center, a man who didn't bother to hide his authority. Marcus Devlin, broad-shouldered, hawk-nosed, dressed in a black duster like some lawless preacher. They pulled up just outside the yard, horses stamping, guns glinting. I put myself between the door and Emma. My heart thundered. I'd stood against worse odds before, but never for anyone but myself. This was different. Every instinct screamed at me to run. Instead, I braced the rifle and waited. Devlin dismounted, first. He didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. "You got something of mine," he said, slow and cold. Thomas Garrett shifted in the saddle, face ashen. "I brought her here, Marcus, like you said, but Devlin cut him off with a wave. "Quiet. You sold her, Thomas, then tried to hide your own sins behind debt." His voice was flat, almost bored. "Tell me, what did you do to the girl?" Thomas sputtered, his bravado gone. I raised her, that's all. She was nothing but trouble." Devlin's eyes narrowed, and in that moment, I saw something terrifying. Pride, but also genuine fury. "You hurt her." Thomas slid off his horse, hands shaking. "It was her mother's fault, not mine. She was never right after she died. Devlin drew his pistol and fired, point blank. Thomas dropped like a sack of meal, blood blooming across the snow. The silence after was so deep it felt like the world held its breath. Emma gasped, shrinking into the wall. I could see it in her eyes, the confusion, the horror. Devlin holstered his gun, turning his attention to me. "You still have a choice. Give her to me and I'll let you walk away." I stepped forward, rifle raised. "She stays!" Devlin studied me, then nodded to his men. "Burn him out!" Before I could blink, 2 of them fanned around back. I caught Emma's eye, motioning her to the rear window. "Go, now, take my revolver, head for the rocks, I'll cover you." Her hands shook, but she did as told, slipping out into the night. Gunfire erupted. Windows shattered, woods splintered. I crouched by the door, firing back, my only thought to keep their eyes on me, not on Emma. Bullets chewed the cabin to pieces. Smoke thickened. My shoulder went numb from the kick of the rifle, my ears ringing with each shot. Somewhere in the chaos, I caught sight of Emma sprinting across the yard, hair streaming, dress catching on the sage. Devlin's men shouted, but I put a round into the dirt near their feet, forcing them to duck. Devlin himself never flinched, just watched her go, jaw tight, eyes burning with a strange, awful grief. Then the fire reached the drapes. Smoke poured through the cabin. I dropped the rifle and crawled toward the back, lungs burning, praying Emma would find cover before they found her. The world shrank to flame and gunpowder. Smoke clawed at my throat as I crawled out the back, coughing hard, eyes streaming. I staggered to my feet behind the barn and checked for Emma. Nothing but the dark stretch of prairie, empty except for moonlit rocks in the distance. I prayed she'd made it that far. Shots cracked around me, bullets splintering wood, and I ducked low, searching for a way to draw them away from her. Behind the cabin, Devlin's men fanned out, rifles ready, shouting into the dark. I recognized their shapes in the gloom. Killers, all of them, following orders and family pride. Devlin himself barked commands, his voice as steady as a church bell. "Find the girl. Bring her to me, alive. Shoot the rancher if you must." I fired twice from cover, forcing 2 of his men back behind a water trough. "Emma," I prayed, "just keep moving." My leg was slick with blood, grazed, but I could still stand. I worked my way toward the shed, heart hammering. trying to keep Devlin's men between me and the rocks where I hoped Emma hid. A gunman spotted me and fired. The shot whined past my ear. I ducked low and scrambled on, the ground hard as iron under my hands. I could hear Emma's breath in my mind, the shallow panic of a child hunted by her own kin. If Devlin caught her, it would be over. In the rocks, Emma crouched, pistol in hand. My old revolver, far too big for her small grip. She flattened herself against a boulder, every muscle tense, wide eyes fixed on the flicker of lanterns below. Her breath fogged in the cold, hands shaking so bad, I thought she'd dropped the gun. Devlin walked out into the open, unhurried, lantern in one hand, dynamite in the other. "You can't run forever, Emma," he called, voice carrying easy across the frozen dirt. "Your blood. You belong with me, not hiding like a stray." His men closed in, rifles raised. He knelt in the dirt, setting the dynamite by the biggest rock, his eyes never leaving Emma's shadowed form. "Come to me now, and the rancher lives. Make me chase you, and I'll burn every hiding place to the ground." I took a shot, clipping the lantern out of his hand. It smashed, oil spraying flame. For a moment, chaos. Men shouting, fire leaping up between Devlin and the rocks. One gunman caught by burning oil. Emma fired, wild and high, but the shot scattered the men long enough for her to crawl deeper into the stones. Devlin roared, his patience snapping, and barked for more dynamite. Pinned, bleeding, outnumbered, I saw the trap closing. Devlin's pride wasn't just about blood or debt. It was twisted into something worse. He needed to prove he could own what was his, even if it meant burning the world to get it. That knowledge filled me with a cold, sharp desperation. I had one move left, one chance to break the spell he held over everyone in his reach. Time slowed to a hard, brittle edge. Devlin crouched by the rocks, flame glinting off the fuse in his hand. He pressed the dynamite against the stone, his jaw clenched, the threat in his eyes clear as the pistol at his side. His men spread out, tightening the circle. I felt every ache, every bruise, every regret as I took aim from the shadows, determined. "To buy Emma even a few more seconds! Stop!" I shouted, voice scraping out raw. "You want the truth? Listen now before you damn yourself further." The words rang over the chaos, halting hands and making Devlin's head turn. He hesitated, fuse flickering between his fingers. "What truth's worth your life, rancher?" I stepped into the lamplight, bleeding and battered. "Thomas Garrett's not just a drunk. He's a monster. Ask Emma what he did to her. Ask yourself if your blood's worth as much as your pride." Tremor passed through Devlin, small but real. He glanced at his dead man on the ground, at Thomas's sprawled body, and finally at Emma, shivering in the rocks, clutching the revolver like a prayer. Emma's voice broke the spell, thin and high. "He beat me, Marcus. He sold me because he was afraid you'd find out. You want the truth? You've always wanted to own me, but you never tried to save me, the—" Fuse sputtered, flame licking closer. Devlin's face twisted, torn between violence and something older, guilt, maybe, or shame. In that split second, I lunged, tackling him just as the dynamite burst in a white flash. Dirt and stone rained down. The blast echoed over the plain, harmlessly far from Emma's shelter. We rolled in the dust, struggling for the gun. Devlin landed a fist to my jaw. I kneed him hard, years of rage finally finding shape. The hired guns stood back, watching the boss's pride fall apart. I got my hand around the barrel, but he was stronger, fueled by the fury of a man who'd built. "His world on control! Let her go!" I shouted, blood in my teeth. "You're killing her same as Thomas did, just slower." He stopped, chest heaving. Emma stepped from the rocks, revolver shaking but aimed at both of us. "If you hurt him, I'll never forgive you," she said, voice flat as the prairie wind. Devlin looked at her, truly looked. Something in him broke. He shoved me off and stumbled to Thomas's body, stood over him, silent and shaking. Then, with a single shot, he ended Thomas for good. Justice or vengeance? I couldn't say. Gunfire faded. The men fell quiet. I staggered to Emma's side, gathering her up, heart pounding. Devlin watched, hands empty, a broken king in a land he'd ruled by fear. The fight was over, but the reckoning had just begun. The prairie held its breath in, the aftermath, only wind and the stench of burnt powder, the silence too big for words. Devlin slumped against his saddle, face drawn and older than I'd ever seen. The last of his men lingered, shifting uneasily, waiting for orders that never came. Emma stood beside me, small but unbroken, the revolver hanging limp in her hand. I watched her watch Devlin, searching for something. Mercy, maybe, or understanding. Devlin finally met her eyes, voice gone thin. I can't undo what's been done. I can't be the father you needed. He looked at me, then back at her. But I can make sure nobody else hurts you again. He fished a pouch of coins from his coat and tossed it at my feet, silver spilling, across the scorched earth. Take her far from here, Mr. Hayes. Don't ever bring her back, you have my word. This is the last of it. I wanted to spit at the money, tell him to take his promises and choke on them. But the look in Emma's eyes stopped me, something softer than anger, sadder than hate. She nodded, a single jerk of the chin. Goodbye, Marcus. We buried Thomas behind the barn, no marker, no prayers, just hard dirt and colder memories. Devlin watched, hat in hand, a figure stripped of every illusion. He mounted up, silent, and rode out with his men, leaving the valley emptier than before. Emma and I packed what little we could carry. The ranch was lost, burned, bullet-scarred, haunted by ghosts neither of us wanted to face. She rode in silence, bundled in my old coat, watching the landscape slide by as we headed south toward Colorado. I didn't speak for a long while. What could I offer, except a promise I'd keep this time? At sundown, we stopped near a creek, the sky painted with fire and sorrow. Emma stared into the water, hands clasped tight. Does it get easier? She asked. I thought of all I'd lost, all I'd found, of nights spent running and the rare days spent standing my ground. Sometimes, I said. Mostly it just gets different. But we're free now. That's something. She smiled, barely, for the first time. We built a small fire and let the silence be a balm, not a curse. I watched her sleep, a blanket pulled up to her chin, and felt the slow thaw of hope in my chest. We'd carry the scars, both of us. But together, maybe we'd find something like healing on the other side of all that pain.